let's go ahead and introduce, because we do have Sean and then we have Wajia around. So we'll actually ask you guys some questions. But first up, let's talk about the topics that we will be discussing today in the webinar. Mark and Sean, can you give them information on what we would be talking about? Thank you. Okay, so today, what we'll talk about is first, of course, we'll navigate the reassessment process and respond to funding updates, communicate plan changes clearly with participants and families, use documentation to support better reassessment outcomes, maintain continuity in rostering and service delivery, leverage digital systems for compliance and team visibility. Please be advised that our webinar today is not really like a classroom form of webinar wherein we have a PowerPoint and we discuss one by one per topic, because we believe that in the new webinar type of setup wherein people ask questions. So if you have any questions first, guys, you may feel free to start asking questions to our host and our presenter before we begin. Okay, there's no question so far.
I guess I will start with asking Sean about this reassessment process and funding changes. Sean, can you walk us through what really happens behind the scenes during an NDIS plan reassessment?
Yeah, look, so behind the scenes, it's very evidence driven. So planners and LECs, they usually map everything back to the NDIS criteria. So we often hear, a lot of those factors that they consider reasonable and necessary, functional impact of the participant and their needs, and usually value for money as well. Is what we're requesting value for money for the participant. I think what most providers miss is that if things are not clearly documented, it's treated as if it didn't happen at all. So it's not about how good the support is, it's about how well it is evidenced. So, and also different evidence is required depending on what is being requested as part of the plan reassessment, if it is a planned plan reassessment as well. So the NDIA usually in the back have different teams and departments depending on the degree of funding being requested made on a plan reassessment. So ultimately, I think there is also a human element in the plan reassessment. Planners and LECs, they are human beings as well, and there is a level of subjectivity when assessing those decisions. So this does mean that when decisions are made, at the end, it still comes down to a certain degree, a person assessing the request. So even if they are meant to be judging by set standards, objective criteria, there is still an element of interpretation to what those standards really mean.
Sean, that's really
Okay.
good to know. Oh yeah, go
So
ahead, Jess.
you know what? I just wanted to check what early warning signs should providers look for to prepare ahead of a reassessment.
Early warning signs.
Yeah.
I would say budget utilization trends. So finding out whether your participants are overusing their budget or underutilizing their budgets. Keeping track of that is really good. Participants' needs changing, right? So if from day to day they are needing more help with tasks that they were being able to do independently before, so that in itself would suggest that their current plan is no longer suitable for them, and they probably have newer goals as well. I think also lack of recent reports or assessments can be a bit of a problem at times. So I think whether you're a core provider or a support coordinator, it's good to be aware of the allied health teams that are involved with your participants' care team. Have they had recent assessments? Have they had recent outcome reports, making sure that those reports are still up to date with the current situation of your participants? And then I think also case notes not linking up to goals or risks. So I think if the data that we have don't clearly show what supports are needed, that is a bit of a warning sign that, when we come to a plan reassessment, well, if our communication and our documentation is not matching what the participant is receiving or what we're requesting, then we likely have a reduction of funds looming around.
Good to know, Sean. I've got another question for you. So, in your experience, what are the most common reasons funding changes occurs?
Okay. So obviously, when we're talking about funding changes, we're talking about either increases or reductions. For increases specifically, which is, look, ideally, most of the time we're wanting our participants to have more funds. And often when plan reassessments occur, if they are, if you want, initiated on our end, we're often asking for more funding most of the time. So for increases, I would say clearly documented risk of what a reduction or if the increase that we're requesting is not provided, then what are the risks involved with that not being the case? Clearly documenting deterioration in conditions as well. Diagnoses. So what I mean by that is more often than not, participants are given an NDIS plan, or their initial application to be a participant of the NDIS is based on one diagnosis. But often there's a lot of participants that have multiple diagnoses. So even getting proper documentation and evidence for that is also really important, which can increase funding. Just changes in needs in general. Often participants are, like we were saying earlier, there are things that they used to be able to do, and now they can no longer do that. Their needs change, their situation change. You've got, let's just say, a participant that was living with their parents, but parents, I don't know, passed away, or parents moved interstate, parents themselves are sick. So participants needing more formal supports and informal supports. So again, clearly documenting that and showing evidence of that as well. Allied health reports, so functional capacity assessments, any functional assessments, really, really, really important. Showing what the participant can and cannot do, backed up by medical evidence. And I think any sort of reports that are being used for plan review addressing that reasonable and necessary criteria that we spoke about earlier is really vital. So as you can tell, evidence is what I'm talking about is vital here. Now, when we're talking about reductions in funds, that tend to come, I would say, underutilization is a big trigger. So, as a support coordinator, I would often tell my participants, guys, if you don't use your funding, you're going to lose it, right? And they think, no, that's not going to happen. You're a provider. You're just telling me that because you want more services. But no, I've seen it happen countless of times. It is true. Underutilization can cause funding to be cut, because I think if a lot of you have been working in the space for a little while, you would know that the NDIS is costing the federal government a lot more money than they initially expected. So there are cuts that are being planned with that, etc. So where they are underutilization and they've given a participant a set amount of funds and they're not using it, they're going to use that as an opportunity to reduce the plan, no doubt. The opposite of what we talked about, so weak reporting and documentation as well. So I think the biggest factor is how the story is told through evidence, right? And not just telling a story and saying, oh, look, the participant needs this, but then where's the backing for that, right? And I think what also happens often is when communication or reports are not clear, it can often suggest that a participant is improving or achieving their goals when they're not. And that can also then reduce the funding.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
Sean.
much.
Before we move to the next topic, I would like to ask these to all the participants right here. You can type in the chat what part of the reassessment process do you find most stressful or unclear. You can type it in the chat. And yeah, Chess.
Yeah.
Let's,
So I have some, one of the things that I'm thinking about is, you know, can you like, do families respond better to early updates or detailed updates once the plan is final?
Oh, look, I think the earlier the better. I would say always early. I think even telling the family, how it could go is preparing
Mm-hmm.
them could reduce the shock, and it also ensures it builds trust as well. Um, I think ultimately, I think providers need to make sure that they let participants know that they're not the decision makers of what can happen during a plan reassessment. Ultimately, it's
Mm-hmm.
the NDIA. So making sure participants are prepared for what could happen. Again, we're seeing a lot of cuts with most plans these days. So ensuring that participants are aware of that, are prepared before the plan reassessment meeting happens, before the new plan comes, is really important so that it doesn't come as a shock to participants and they're having reduction of funding without explanation or preparation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Gia, do you have anything in mind to follow up with the question that I asked so far? Because, perhaps, you know, how about the audience? Do you have any follow-up questions, guys? Everybody's quiet today. I guess they're excited because, some people might be celebrating tomorrow and all that. So, yeah. So, Gia, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question. Given your experience, Sean, in this industry, how do you suggest these providers to communicate funding reductions while maintaining trust?
It's kind of like what I was just talking about a few minutes ago. So I think being transparent and talking to them early on is really important. But I think also being solution focused, right? If we have a reduction, uh, here's what the new plan allows, guys, and here's how we can adjust but keep you supported with the things that you need, right? I think generally speaking, I know some participants also have unrealistic expectations, but I think generally speaking, people don't expect perfection. They just expect honesty and a good plan. And I think if we can offer that, most people can move forward. But yeah, look, like I said earlier, setting expectations right ahead of time is going to make that conversation easier. So if a participant is not happy with the outcome of a plan reassessment, then helping them explore the ways they can essentially dispute that decision is important as well, while remaining realistic as well. So that would be something else to consider, especially support coordinators. If a decision is made and you're not happy with it, going through an internal review process, for example, reevaluating the evidence that was submitted. But again, what I would not do is promise anything to the participant, because ultimately it's not the decision of a support coordinator or a core provider to what happens after a plan reassessment.
that's really call this valuable. Yeah, thanks, Sean. Also, Sean, what are the top 3 documents that actually help make reassessment easier for an planner to approve or LAC?
Top 3. Look, most importantly by far, I would say would be allied health reports, especially functional assessments, right? So if often a functional capacity assessment from an OT for most plan reassessment is really needed. If we're talking mental health or behaviors, and functional assessments in those areas as well is really important. Where support coordinator is involved, progress reports to show how participants are progressing towards their goals, what barriers they are facing, where they're at with that journey. And then I would say incident reports. I think that is one that is often missed by a lot of people handling plan reassessments. If you have a reoccurring incident reports in day-to-day care, especially, it shows that perhaps your participant is needing more support than they're having. There's a few other things as well. Obviously, these are the top three that we think, but some of the things that are really important to have is really good case notes. I think a support coordinator should be asking call providers this, even a summary of case notes for a duration of time, or specific case notes highlighting participant needs or deterioration, things like that. Risk documentation as well, with real examples. As we mentioned earlier, I think documenting risk, saying, okay, well, if my participant doesn't get this increase of funding, how is that going to impact them? And showing examples of maybe where that happened. If you've got a participant that's got 5 hours of support a day and you're requesting 8, show an example of a day where you've provided 5 hours of support and then another time where they're without support and something happened, that will show the risk as well. And I think then there's probably very specific evidence as well, depending on situations. Hospital discharge summaries. If you've got a participant that is hospitalized often, discharge summaries are important to have. Police reports if they're involved with the justice system or get into trouble with the police system. Sleep logs if you've got a participant that has overnight supports, and behavior of concerns logs as well. So if you've got a participant that has behaviors of concerns or a behavior support plan, those things will be really important to have as documents as well.
Thanks, Sean. We have here a question from Edley. Can providers add support items that are not listed in the schedule of support to the participant's funding? So basically, they can add support items to the funding as needed?
Well, I think that depends if it's in their plan or not. Right. I think when you're talking about a schedule of support is usually linked to a service agreement. Right. So I think there's a few ways of answering that question. I think ideally, when you're supporting a participant with a service, you should support them with services that are listed in your service agreement. If you're needing to do support that are additional to that, you should add it to the schedule of support. Now, before adding it to the schedule of support, one thing to do is making sure that the participant has that particular funding in their plan as well. So if you're a call provider, for instance, and you don't have access to the NDIS plan, checking with the support coordinator or asking the participant to send you a copy of the plan so you can double check. If you're in touch with the LAC, asking the LAC. That's all I would make sure, because what you don't want is essentially starting a service. Let's just say you've got a participant who is asking you to provide skill development through capacity building. Right, and you've put that in your service agreement and you send your invoice to the plan manager, suddenly he doesn't get paid because the participant doesn't even have that category of funding. So you want to make sure those things are there and you take these steps before commencing.
Thank you so much, Sean. Jessica, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yep. So just to check here, what process would help avoid cancellation, under servicing, and over servicing?
Real-time budget tracking.
Why?
Right. So what I mean by that is if you have an ability or a system that can show you, okay, well, this week I've provided this many services to my participant. This is how much funding it's going to take from their budget. What is remaining, right? And then from there, if either it's done manually, if you've got a system that shows you, okay, well, 60% of the plan has gone in terms of time, but 40% of the funding has been used. That means there's a 20% underutilization. Or if it's the other way around, 50% of the time has gone, but 70% of the plan has been used funding-wise. 20% overutilization, right? So real-time budget tracking is good to ensure that, well, if you're overutilizing, you don't get to a point where fundings run out and you don't have to stop services, but also can show you, okay, well, my participant is clearly asking for more support. There may be a need for a plan reassessment here. So having some sort of tool or some sort of system to track that would be really good. I think if you also know that you're going to be going for a plan reassessment, then forecasting as well. Forecasting for two things. Number one would be for what is the remainder of the plan. So finding, okay, for the rest of the plan, I've got that much funding, how many hours can my participant have? But also forecasting for what you're requesting. So if I say in the next plan, I'm requesting this, what is that going to look like? How many hours a day are you saying? How many hours a week? How many hours a fortnight? So having some sort of system that handles that would be good too. And a little bit kind of like with Edley's question there, so flexible service agreements. So I think if you're having to adjust at what service you're providing or the frequency of services, having a service agreement that allows you to make some of those changes flexibly would be good. And a good rostering system. If I have to go from, let's just say 8 hours of support every day to 5 hours of support every day, changing, the shifts my workers are doing, changing which worker is working. If you have to do that all manually, it's really hard. So having a system to adjust rosters because your funding has been cut is really good. So I think it's more about planning ahead than reacting after the fact.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you,
So
Sean.
yeah, go ahead, Shia.
Yeah,
Fire
thank you,
away.
Sean. Yeah. I've got another question for you. So, some providers they use manual systems. So, what do you think that what visibility gaps do these providers usually struggle with when they're using like manual systems?
Okay, when they're using manual systems,
Mhm.
I think the moment your company has grown to a certain size, I think only very small providers with a handful of participants can even operate manually. I think manual systems after a certain point, you're creating yourself blind spots while using them. So you've got no real visibility of what we just talked about, so budgets, risks, service delivery. I think then you end up making decisions too late. So being able to track that kind of information is really important to stay ahead, and being able to identify the issues that can come and addressing them as quickly as possible. So I think it's very easy to miss a variety of things. I think everybody here who's joined, who are providers, you can probably attest to that. There's so much to do. There's so much you're looking over. You're often drowning in compliance tasks or admin tasks that you're not having time to handle everything. So having tools and systems that help you handle those tasks will essentially reduce the time investment you're having to make for all of those tasks. And I think that's what I would recommend ultimately, is finding yourself systems and tools that reduce the amount of time all those tasks take.
Thank you,
Okay.
Sean.
Well, I have a follow-up on that. Since, Gia actually asked something about manual. People are still some people would still like to do the manual thing themselves. Um, but why is it better to like automate or do things in a digital perspective rather than, you know, relying on the old manual ways? Um, you know, when there are times you can't access, the internet, or you can't really access
Mhm.
your gadget and all that. So why?
Sorry, can you repeat that? So
So I was like asking, Gia was asking about, some people like to do the manual things, but what's the advantage of not doing things manually?
hello. Sorry, I think I got disconnected for a bit there.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay, so Gia, you were asking about manual, right? Like some providers like to do things manual. So on my follow up, um, what's the benefit or doing the other way around, like not manually? Yeah, there. So sorry for forgot my question if that's the case.
I think they have internet issue on their
Is
end.
it
Yeah.
just on my end?
No,
I
I
think
think it's
also
my.
Gia's also experiencing the same thing.
Okay, yeah.
All right, Mark, go ahead and just ask other questions. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Apologies.
Uh, no worries. Sean, can you share a real example where technology prevented a service disruption?
Um, I think, look, I've used a variety of tools and systems as well, but I think if I'm speaking specifically as a support coordinator or even a core provider, actually, I think I've seen systems being able to flag really quickly where budget is being overutilized, right? So then it quickly allows team to adjust the support and prepare evidence before a reassessment, kind of what we were talking about. I think without that, I think what would end up happening is service delivery would have continued as usual, and it would come up to 3 months before the plan ends, and we've run out of funding, and then services stop. So I think that has saved that particular provider a lot of issues with their participant, right, and ensured continuity of support. But also, I think it's really hard for providers to do ongoing case noting without a system. And being able to get reports from that, etc., and being able to use those case notes effectively. So I think being able to do case note reports to send as evidence for a plan reassessment is really important. So on specific system, you can just select a date range that you need and just export that to send to whoever for a plan reassessment. Not as easy to do manually. And as we've discussed earlier, so when there are those changes, plan funding cuts or funding increases, and you need to adjust frequency of services, well, having a good rostering system to allow you to make those changes without needing to manually contact each worker saying, hey, you used to do this time, but now the plan has changed, so now you need to do this time. If they're all linked onto the same system, they can see the changes without you needing to contact every individual. So I've seen that a multitude of times.
Totally agree with that, Sean. Thank you so much appreciate you for sharing that. But we now open. We'd love to hear from the attendees if there's something that you've been dealing with or unsure about. You can ask question now.
Yeah, like.
Sean is open to answer any
Mhm.
questions you'd like to ask. Feel free.
Yep. So, like, I just want to ask the audience, has any of you guys received any um unexpected reduced funding? If you've ever experienced this, and what was the impact?
That's a
Any from
good
our
question,
guests?
Jessica.
Does anyone want to answer that question? All right.
We have
I
a
saw
quiet
one.
audience today.
Yeah, I saw
Everybody's
one raised his
quiet.
hand. I think it's Mirza. Hey, dear.
Um, yeah, I have a different question. I believe there's another one hand raised. You maybe they want to answer.
Oh yeah,
It's
go ahead.
Wyndham.
Wyndham,
Wyndham.
Wyndham.
Hi,
Hi.
Wyndham. How are
Hey guys,
you?
not bad. How you doing?
Doing great. Yeah.
It'll be a bad network issue, but I hope you guys can hear me. So I would just talk about a client like we lost his funding. It's kind of ran out, and later on we did the review thing. Supposed to get the funding say this month, but later on they said like the guy had some court issues, court cases, and then they said like would go after that, and looks like he's going to lose whatever he had in his funding. And um, is it influenced because of his court cases, or like um, whatever he's doing? Because he was kind of regular sort of guy, but later on he joined the that rainbow thing, what do you call LGBTQ thing. I don't know, like if like funding or that sort of thing is going to be kind of influenced because of LGBTQ involvement, or and he got issues with the vandalism sort of thing. He like did broke few of our seal houses. Like since he like used to be there, we like kind of gave him access to like even if he didn't have the funding, we provided the kind of free resident sort of support and whatever other support he needed. But he was like going crazy because he was not without like having proper support because of no fund, nothing, and it's been a bit hard to handle him uh, time to time, and sometimes he goes missing. So like, what could be major factor like for the cut of his fund? Is it that like LGBTQ thing or his court cases?
No. So look, any of those things you just mentioned there would not have any impact on his funding at all. The criteria that the NDIS uses to determine funding is completely need-based and diagnosis-based. If somebody, so recently, since about October 2024, they have now introduced the ability to reassess participants to determine whether they can stay on the schemes or not. But one of the criteria for anybody entering the NDIS is the fact that they need to have long life disabilities, and that's it. So the other factors that you're mentioning that don't have an impact on the funding itself. However, in saying that, when you're saying he's getting court cases, etc., if any participant is moved to any other government funded bodies, for instance, somebody going from NDIS to TAC, going from TAC to, or from NDIS to aged care, usually the government sees that as a duplication. So if he, for whatever reason, he's entered another system, that could result in him losing his NDS funding. But the few situations that you just mentioned there, no, that doesn't have any impact on his funding. If he is getting into the sort of trouble that you're mentioning, I don't know if that also means that he's not being able to, or like the care team is not being able to gather evidence to continue his plan as well. Because there's one thing to note. Evidence is not just needed for participant requesting for more funding. It's also for participants justifying they need the same funding in the next plan. Right. So if somebody's got $100,000 for 1 year and they're coming to the end of their plan, if you're not requesting for more, you still need evidence that you need the same funding. So if you don't have evidence, they could cut it. I hope that answers your question.
Another question, like, so we are just in between onboarding a client who is with TAC at the moment. So from your like suggestion or like whatever you say that if we move like try to get him into NDIS funding, then will it be kind of damaging to him, or just what would be the best on that case?
I'm so sorry, I didn't really hear your question here.
Oh, sorry, like we are in between, like in the process of getting a client with us. Like he's currently getting the support from TAC, but he doesn't have the NDIS funding. So will it be better to keep him with the TAC, or better to get him with the NDIS? That
Well,
whatever damage he got is lifetime.
Yeah,
No
so
chance
look,
of getting out from
that is not a straightforward answer, and that's because it totally depends on what kind of package he has with TAC compared to what he could get with the NDIS. Right. So if he's got TAC funding, even the likelihood of that person becoming an NDIS participant would determine as to whether that accident resulted into a disability or not. But then what usually happens if they do make an application for a transfer to the NDIS, even that what happens is the NDIS will communicate with TAC. They usually have some sort of meeting to determine what is best for that person. As to what is best, ultimately, well, it totally depends on what they're currently getting funded and what the NDIS would be willing to fund. So that is a case-by-case basis, really.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. I think we'll go next with Mirza. I think Mirza's asking something. Mirza, you're still here?
Or anyone else has any other questions?
All right. I guess we're all good. Again, before we wrap up, we'd love for you to stay connected with us. Thank you so much, Sean, for that insightful and sharing your experience with us.
My pleasure.
For everyone's information, we run this webinar regularly, like covering key NDIS topics for compliance and operations to financial management and growth strategies. So make sure to keep yourself posted for our upcoming sessions. And also, just a quick update, Vertex 360 will soon be transitioning to Supportee. It will be same features, but much improved experience. Thank you so much. Jess?
So stay tuned. Please be advised that the recording of the webinar will be available in our website next week. Probably it will be up and running on the webinar section on our website come Tuesday next week, and we will also be sending you a copy. If you have any questions, mainly about the topics that we have spoken about, we will be sharing the email address of Sean. And you may also contact Gia at vertex360.io, or you may also email us at info@vertex360.io. So that's all. And thank you for attending. And for those celebrating Eid tomorrow, we would like to greet you a happy Eid. Okay? All right. Enjoy feasting. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you
Sean.
so
Thank you,
much
Thanks,
for
everyone.
everyone.
signing
Thank you,
out.
Sean. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Signing off.